Good morning. Javier Becerra, Chairman of the Democratic Caucus, joined by our Vice Chairman of the Democratic Caucus, Joe Crowley of New York. We finished a session where we heard from representatives of a coalition that is called Bibles, Badges, and Business. You have people from the faith community, especially the evangelical community of this country. You have folks from the law enforcement community throughout America at every level of government. And we have every sector of American business in this coalition called Bibles, Badges, and Business. And their principal purpose for coming together is to get to a yes on finally fixing our broken immigration system and passing a comprehensive immigration reform bill, which will be good for our economy, good for our security, and certainly good for all those families in America that are trying to live the American dream. They gave us details of the work that they're doing, how they are speaking to a lot of our colleagues, Republicans and Democrats alike, what the work they did during the discussion and debate in the Senate on the comprehensive immigration reform bill that passed in the Senate by 68 votes, 68 bipartisan votes out of 100 senators. And they are now working to try to see if they can help get us to yes in the House of Representatives as well. So we were very pleased to have them present before us today. We know they have presented to our Republican colleagues and our Senate colleagues as well, and so we were pleased to have them come before us this morning. We believe that we can get it done when it comes to fixing our broken immigration system. In fact, Democrats believe that we can get a number of things done. And first and foremost, we should focus on the most important issue for most Americans, that is jobs. Moving forward on an economy that is not only creating more opportunities and work for Americans, but that will build an America that will last for quite some time. The one difficulty with that object of getting work done and putting Americans to work is Congress isn't getting its work done. And we have now seen that after 203 days of 2013, of which 78 days have been legislative work days. So about a third of the time the House of Representatives has actually been at work. What we find is that very little, unfortunately, is getting done. Few bills are getting to the President's desk. But of those bills, none of them coming out of the House of Representatives has been on job creation, a jobs agenda. And we urge our Republican colleagues to work with us to get on a jobs agenda. In fact, the President is beginning this week on visits throughout the country to get across the message that it is time for Congress to get to work in helping Americans get back to work. We find that it's difficult to comprehend when the Speaker of the House of Representatives this weekend says that the agenda for the House Republican leadership and House Republican members is not so much to pass bills and do the work of creating the laws that will help stimulate the economy, help stimulate the activity that Americans want to see to help them buy a home, get back to work. But it seems like, from what the Speaker is saying, that their agenda is to repeal laws. Now, whether it's to enact laws or to repeal laws, at least get something done. On enacting jobs legislation, House Republican leadership has a 0 record. On repealing laws, maybe they don't think there's some of these laws that we have are very good. On repealing laws, what's the House Republican leadership's record? 0 laws repealed. And so neither are they passing good bills, nor are they repealing any bills they think are bad. End result is that very little is being done by this Congress, and that's perhaps why more and more we're seeing headlines talking about the least productive Congress ever here in the House of Representatives. And so we'd like to work with our Republican colleagues to get things done. Solutions come not from partisanship, they come from working together. We think on immigration reform, on jobs, on health care, we can work together to get things done. And so we urge our Republican colleagues to use the last 2 weeks that we have before we go on an August recess to get things done. Let's show the American people we want to get to work the way they want to get to work. And with that, let me now yield to the Vice Chairman, Joe Crowley.
Thank you, Congressman Becerra. I thought it was very refreshing for our caucus to hear from all these interest groups, Bibles, Badges, and Business, to show the comprehensive effort that's out there and nonpartisan effort that's out there in our country for comprehensive, full comprehensive immigration reform. Within that discussion, the gentleman representing the Bibles was saying how they're praying for America. They're praying for those who support comprehensive immigration reform. They're praying for those who don't support comprehensive immigration reform. It reminded me of a great Irish prayer. May those that love us love us. May those that don't, may God turn their hearts. And if God cannot turn their hearts, may they turn their ankles so we know them by their limp. I'm actually more optimistic that their efforts will pay off, though, in the end. And I think as more Americans understand how important the passage of comprehensive immigration reform is not just for those who would benefit directly, but all of us as a whole, as a country, will benefit by that reform. And so I was, and I think many of my colleagues today in our caucus were moved by this coalition that's working in this bipartisan way.
We'll take a question or two. I have to run, and I'll leave the floor to the vice chairman after I have to leave. Ginger.
Sarah, there was Chairman Goodlatte floated an idea on pathway to citizenship that would essentially allow those who are here already to use the existing avenues, not create a new one. What are your thoughts on using that?
Again, any discussion about trying to fix the broken immigration system are good. We'd like to see constructive solutions. We don't want to be back here in 5 or 10 years trying to fix the broken immigration system again. And so we think that any conversation that gets us to a constructive fix of the total system, so you're not just trying to work on one broken part and leaving all the broken parts where they are, is worth considering. We'd love to see what any of our colleagues might propose, whether it's Chairman Goodlatte or anyone else, so we can take a look if in fact it's something that would be constructive, productive towards getting us past having a broken immigration system. So we would encourage all members to propose things and put them in front of not just members of Congress but the American people, so we can see. I think everyone recognizes that, at least with regard to the Dreamers, that there is a need to try to deal with the students, those young people who have worked very hard to show that they belong in America. And certainly they will tell you, the Dreamers themselves will tell you, the last thing we want is to have America tell us we're okay, but tell our parents to go away.
Yes, Judge. It's been about a month since the Senate passed its bill. Why hasn't any House Democrat introduced that bill now?
I think you're going to find that House Democrats, in trying to work with our Republican colleagues, will try to move in as bipartisan a way as possible. I certainly know that a number of members on the Democratic side have talked about the Senate bill. Certainly a number of Democrats are prepared to vote for the Senate bill were to be put on the floor of the House. And I wouldn't doubt that at some point, if we can't see our Republican colleagues making any moves to actually deal with the broken immigration system in a comprehensive way, that it wouldn't surprise me if you don't see Democrats get out there pretty quickly talking about at least give us a chance to vote on the Senate bill.
Could you do this next year? Could you do it in an election year, or do you have to do it this year?
And I'm going to let the Vice Chairman also answer, because I'm going to run after this. I think we've seen how in an election year it gets very difficult to get a lot done. And that's unfortunate, especially given that this Congress under House Republican leadership has done virtually nothing. And so you hope that we can get things done next year, whether or not there's an election at hand. We should be able to walk and chew gum at the same time if we've been elected to represent the people. But there's no doubt that the closer you get to election, the more members of Congress's attention turns to their re-election. And this is just too important an issue to let go. The American public has made it very clear they are so far ahead of the politicians when it comes to what to do on immigration reform. And so I believe that we can get it done this year. We should get it done this year. And my hope is that bipartisanly we will get it done this year. And let me ask the Vice Chairman to answer as well as I move on. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Javier. Well, I think Congressman Becerra said it all. I do think that it is more difficult. We've seen this in the past in other bills as well in years past. When we get into election mode, it does become more difficult to attack the major issues, more controversial issues. Some would suggest we should leave it for the elections, for the electorate to decide, but I think they already have done that. And poll after poll has indicated they want us to act. They want us to act in a comprehensive way. It's time for our colleagues on the Republican side of the aisle to stop the shenanigans, to work towards a comprehensive bill, forget this plan of repeal, and actually have a vision for America. They've yet to establish a vision for America. You can't have a vision for America when all you're doing is going backwards.
There's a number of amendments on the defense bill, NSA, Syria. Any thoughts on those? You think Democrats would support?
Well, we're gonna, as you know, that we still have a process ahead of us, and as to hear the debate on the floor itself. I think that both Democrats and Republicans, obviously, because some of them are bipartisan, have some concerns in terms of the NSA issue, as well as Syria and Egypt, and we'll take them up on the floor, each by themselves, and we'll have that vote. I myself personally, I'm going to look at all three of those issues closely and come to determination as to what I think is in the best interest of our country moving forward.
Going off of that a little bit, so yesterday we found that we're going to try to arm the Syrian rebels. Can you talk, was there any mention of that this morning, or how do you
No, there was no discussion today about arming the Syrian rebels. What I think is really most important and paramount here is that we end the suffering, we end the slaughter in Syria. What's going on, what the Syrian government is doing is immoral, in my belief, and that needs to end. It is not the sole responsibility of the United States, although we're a major player in moving towards an end of that violence. I would hope that our friends in Russia would also participate in bringing an end to that violence and in that suffering and the slaughter that's taking place in Syria. Yes.
apologize for coming late if this has already been asked of you. How have you, as the conference and the caucus and leadership, begun to talk about what's going to play out as we near the end of the fiscal year? 9 legislative days going to go.
There was no discussion this morning about that. We continue to have our own conversations about that, but that was not discussed this morning in the caucus meeting.
What discussions have been?
We've been having some discussions, as I just said,
Yeah.
at,
And you couldn't
at the leadership level. I
elaborate.
won't elaborate at this time, but we've had discussions about it. Okay. Yes.
On the Voting Rights Act, no members of the CBC are moving on that. Just wondering how big a priority that is, if you guys are talking about that in meetings like this. And Mr. Clyburn was appointed by Leader Pelosi.
We have had discussions. They have been at our caucus meetings in the past, although not today. But yesterday we had a discussion at Steering and Policy about that as well. Is what Mr. Clyburn and others working with our Republican colleagues as well. I think that there is some hope that we can work something this year as well on the Voting Rights Act. That's my hope.
How do you see that process playing out?
It's too early to say, but I think it was good to see Mr. Sensenbrenner as well as Mr. Lewis testifying last week in the Senate on this. I think it showed that there is bipartisan support. Okay. Thank you all.